We continue now at the top of Daf Tzadi Hey Amud Aleph in Mesechet Kesubos. This is Kesubos Daf 95a. On the previous summer, two people came before Rav Yosef. They each had a shtar about a certain property. On one of the shtaros, the date was the 5th of Nisan, and on the other person's shtar just said Nisan, it didn't say a date. And so Rav Yosef said that the property goes to the person who has the shtar which says the 5th of Nisan, because we assume the other shtar is actually later. But then the person with the other shtar said to Rav Yosef, well, at least tirfa me'ir va'ilach, at least write me a document that allows me to collect from the person who sold me the field from any liened property from Iyar and onward. As Rashi over here says, tirfa litrof lekuchos merosh chodesh Iyar. Any lekuchos from the time of Rosh Chodesh Iyar that bought from this seller, sharei machro lo b'achrayis, because this was sold and there was a guarantee, and now I'm not getting the property that I actually paid for, so write me that document at least. So Amar Lei, so Rav Yosef said back to him, no, Yachli Lamei Marloch, that's not going to work. Because they, the Lekuchos, will be able to respond to you. They'll say, At Barchad ben Nisan At. They'll say, no, maybe you actually were entitled to the sale. Maybe the date on your shtar really should have been the 1st of Nisan. And really you should be going back to the person who had the date of the 5th of Nisan, getting the property from him, and he has it unlawfully, so don't take anything from us. So that's not really going to work. As Rashi over here says, Yochli l'meimar lekuchos at bar chad b'nisan at ushtarcha kodem v'shalo kedin not l'mimcha. You should have had that property, not the person who had the date of the 5th of Nisan, and therefore you have no business coming to us. And so the Gemara says, well, mai takante, so what can the person do to fix the situation? Now he's in a situation where he's not getting the property because we're assuming the shtar of the 5th of Nisan is really the rightful owner of the property. But on the other hand, he's not able to collect from Lekuchos, he's not able to carry through on the guarantee that the seller gave him. And so the Gemara answers very simply, Nichtavu harsha lahadadi. What they do is, the two purchasers, they just authorize each other to collect for each other, on each other's behalf. And therefore, if the Lekuchos say, let's say, to the person where it just said Nisan, they say, you're the true buyer, really it's the person from the 5th of Nisan, he'll simply say, no, I have authorization to collect on his behalf as well. Rashi over here says, Nichtavu harsha la'adadi yivakesh meis chaveru bar chamisha b'Nisan. He should ask from his friend who has the date of the 5th of Nisan. V'yimser lo shtaro v'yichtav lo harsha alav. He should give him his shtar and write a harsha, authorize him, litrof lekuchos, to collect from lekuchos. V'yimyomer lo bar chad b'Nisan at, and if they say to him, you really on the 1st of Nisan and you should have had the property, don't come to us. Omer Lem, you can simply say to them, Ani bo litrof b'shvil moshel chamisha b'Nisan. I'm collecting from my friend who was the 5th of Nisan. Sharei l'shneinu machra b'achrayis, because we both, there was a guarantee to both of us. V'ani ba b'harsha lechem mikochos, so now I have an authorization from him. V'im yomer lo hu kadem, and then if they respond, well, he was really first. V'yat bar chavtes b'Nisan, and you're really of the 29th of Nisan. Hayisomer lahem, ani ba machmas atzmi, then I'll be able to say, fine, so I'm coming for myself. If he has an authorization from the other individual, so miman of shach, he'll be able to collect. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Misha haya nasoi beis nashim u'machar esadeyu. Let's say a person is married to two women and he sells his field. Rashi over here says, u'machar esadeyu hameshubed l'chsubos. In other words, he has a piece of property, which there's a lien on that property, it's supposed to pay the ksubos, and he's married to these women and he sells it. V'kosva rishona l'lokeach. And so the first one, she writes to the lokeach. Rashi says the first one means the first wife that he married. So she writes to the lokeach, dinu dvarim ein li'imach. I have no case against you. This property that was sold to you, I'm not going to try to get it from you. So the Mishnah says, Hashniya motzia mehalokeach. So what can happen is as follows. So it's true about the first wife, she can't get it from the lokeach. She already said she's not going to try to pursue the lokeach. But the second wife, she is able to get it from the lokeach. V'rishona min hashniya. But then the first wife can get it from the second wife because she has precedence, because again, she was married first, her ksuba was first. V'halokeach min harishona. But then what happens is that the lokeach now goes back to the Rishona and says, well, I can get it from you because you already wrote to me, Dinu Devar mainly Imach. The Chozros Chalila, and then what will happen is this will go on forever. That again, the second one will take it from the Lokeach, the first one from the second, the Lokeach from the first. So Ad Sheyasub Shara B'neim, this will keep going until they reach some kind of compromise. V'chein Baal Chov, v'chein Isha Baal Aschov. The Mishnah comments at the end, the same would be true by a Baal Chov, by a creditor, and the same would be true by a wife, that's a Baal Aschov, by a creditor. And Rashi over here says, v'chein Baal Chov, v'chein Isha Baal Aschov, by a creditor, by a woman that's a creditor, Mefarish b'Gemara, this will be explained in the Gemara. And the Gemara says, "V'chi kosvalei my have." So even if she writes to this lokeach, dinu devar mainly imach, what does that even help? V'atanya, but didn't we learn in a brayso? So Omer lechaver, if somebody says to his friend, dinu devar mainly al sadazu, I have no case against you in terms of this field. V'ainli esek ba, I have no dealings with it. V'yadim misulekes heimena, I'm removing my hand from it. Lo amar klum, all of these kinds of languages, they're not effective at all. So when she says dinu devarim, it should not be an effective type of statement. And so the Gemara answers, Hacha mayaskinan b'shekanu miyada. No, over here it's different. In the Mishnah, it's not just simply that she said dinu devarim, but they also made a kinyan to this effect. Rashi over here says, b'shekanu miyada v'amina b'hakosev l'ishto. We already said in Perak hakosev l'ishto, de'echad dekanu miyada migufa shel karka kanu miyada, that if they make a kind of a kinyan already, so then it's as if she's being makne the karka itself, and there's a real true kinyan over here on the karka, and therefore again she has no case when it comes to the karka. But the Gemara continues and asks, "V'chikanu miyadam I have it," but still, even if they made a kinyan and she's saying she wants nothing to do, she has no case against him in terms of the property. But my have it, who cares? What's the difference? Tema nachas ruach asisi lebali. Can't she just claim that the reason why I said that was because I wanted to do something pleasant for my husband? I saw that my husband wanted to sell a piece of property that really there was a lien on for my ksuba. He really wanted to sell it, so therefore I said I won't contest anything because I wanted to please my husband. But really, she's not serious about that. She doesn't want to give up her rights to this land. And we see this concept of nachas ruach asisi lebali because milo tanan, because didn't we learn in a Mishnah? Lokach mino ish v'chazer v'lokach mino isha. Let's say the person buys it from the husband and then he goes in and he buys it from the wife. So mekcho batal. That is the same basic idea that mekach is batal. That purchase is not going to work. Alma, you see from that Mishnah the same idea. Yecholi shetomer nachas ruach asisi lebali. That a woman is able to say, no, I didn't really mean it when I made this kinyan. What I was just doing was I was doing something pleasing for my husband. Rashi over here says, Mecho batal mashma lagamri. Ve'afilu b'chaya bal. It sounds like the mekach is not going to work at all, even during the lifetime of the husband. Ubebaba ba'asr mokminan la ba'achas me'osan shalosh sado, so yichda lo l'ksubasa, o kasav la b'socha ksuba, o shechnisa lo shum mishalah. So in Baba Basra they say various situations of the type of field that he is selling, but the point over here is, during his lifetime, it is his field, it is the husband's field, and then the person purchasing it from the husband is also purchasing the rights from the wife, because after the husband dies, that field will then, the wife will have rights over that field, but that does not work. Mecho batal, and it's not only batal after the husband dies, even during the lifetime of the husband it's going to be batal, because she can simply say, nachas ruach asisi lebali. So again, the same thing over here in our Mishnah. Why are we saying that she made a kinyan and therefore that should be effective? Why don't we say, nachas ruach asisi lebali? And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Zeira, Amar Rav Chisda. Rav Zeira says that Rav Chisda says, Lo kasha, it's not difficult. Here again, we seem to have a contradiction in Mishnayos. The Mishnah that we just quoted seems to say that a woman could say Nachas Ruach Asisi Lebali. In our Mishnah, it seems that she cannot claim Nachas Ruach Asisi Lebali. So Rav Chisda says it's not a kasha. Ha Rabbi Meir, Ha Rabbi Yehuda, because one Mishnah is following the opinion of Rabbi Meir and the other is following the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. And we see this dispute in the following Brisa, the Tanya, as we learned in a Brisa. Kasav Larishon Let's say he writes over, he's trying to sell a field, he writes it to the first purchaser, but she doesn't sign it. Again, she doesn't agree to the sale. This again is property that really she has rights to. L'sheini v'chasmalo, but then he writes it to a second purchaser, and that one she signs. So the halach is, ivda ksubasa divrei Rabbi Meir. Meir says now she has lost her ksuba. That's the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Rashi over here says, ivda ksubasim ein sham b'nei chorin, meaning to say, if there is no free property anymore, now she has to collect from property that has a lien on it. So now Sharei Rishon Omer hinachti lach makam ligvos emenu. So here the first purchaser can say, I left you some property that you can't collect from me the lien property, meaning that first property, because I left property that was then sold to the second. And then on the second one, she signed on it. And so therefore she basically gave away that property as well. And so she has lost her ability to collect the ksuba. But Rabbi Yehuda says, no, Yecholi Hishatomar, she's able to claim, Nachas Ruach Asisi Labali. No, I was just signing in order to please my husband, and therefore the signature doesn't really mean anything, and therefore she is able to collect. Rashi over here says, Yecholi Hishatomar, Minasheni Tigmesh, she can collect from the second one, because again, she can say that which I signed on that sale, I didn't really mean it. And Rabbi Yehuda finishes off that she can say, Atem malachem malayu, what claim do you have against me? In other words, again, she's allowed to collect from the second purchaser because she can say that which she signed, it doesn't have any real meaning. But the Gemara continues and asks, V'Rebbi sasam lahachak Rabbi Meir, v'sasam lahasam Rabbi Yehuda, but still it doesn't make sense. Because now we're saying that Rebbe over here, he follows Rabbi Meir, he doesn't hold of this idea in our Mishnah of Nachas Ruach Asisi Lavali. But then you're saying that Rebbe who wrote the Mishnayos, so the Mishnah in Gittin, there he's following Rabbi Yehuda, that there is a claim of Nachas Ruach Asisi Lavali. And so the Gemara answers, Amar Rav Papa says, Begrusha v'divrei hakol. Rashi over here says, Amar Rav Papa masnisin k'shaisa grusha. Case in our Mishnah is actually where she was already divorced. And after she was already divorced, that's when she wrote this to the Lokech saying that I don't contest the sale at all. So in that situation, once she's already divorced, there is no nachas ruach claim. She can't claim she's pleasing her husband because they're already divorced, and that's why our Mishnah doesn't have such a claim, even though in the Mishnah in Gittin there is such a claim. And the Gemara continues with another answer. Rav Ashi says, Kula Rabbi Meir. He actually, both Mishnayos really follow Rabbi Meir. V'adkan lo kama Rabbi Meir hasam ela b'shnei lekuchos. And when Rabbi Meir said that she does not have a claim of nachas ruach asisi labali, that's where there were two purchasers. The Amri lo, because then we can say to her, Isa de nachas ruach avadet l'kamoy boylach l'mevad. If you were just doing it to please your husband when you signed off on the second sale, you should have signed off on the first sale also. But she didn't sign off on the first sale. That indicates that when she signed off on the second sale, she was serious. But let's say you would just have one purchaser. Even Rabbi Meir would admit that she can make the claim nachas ruach asisi labali umasnizin dekasav leilacher, and that's our Mishnah. Our Mishnah is talking about where he had written it to somebody else first, and she didn't sign off on it, and then only later she signed off. So that shows that she was serious. And the Gemara continues, Tanan Hasam, we learned over there in the Mishnah in Gittin, Ein nifroin min chasim mishubadim. There's a general rule: you can't collect from property with a lien. Let's say you're collecting a debt, and you want to collect from property that was sold by the person who is in debt. You're not allowed to collect from that property. If, let's say, the borrower has free property, if the borrower has actual property of his, you have to take that property first. If there's no property, so only then do you go to the nechasim mishubadim, the property with a lien on it. And that's even true if the free property is of inferior quality. Still, you have to take from that first, and only if that doesn't exist do you go to the nechasim mishubadim. That's what the Mishnah says. And the Gemara continues, they had the following question, what if you had a situation where the free property was actually ruined? Rashi over here says, after the purchasers purchased some other property, there was still some free property left, and that free property was ruined. So what would be the halacha in that situation? The litrof mimeshabdi, would she be allowed, or would the creditor be allowed to collect from the chasim mishubadim in such a situation? And the Gemara continues, Tashma, come in here a proof from the Brisa we quoted above, Kasav l'rishon v'lo chasmalo. Let's say he writes it over to the first purchaser, but she doesn't sign off on it. L'sheni v'chasmalo, but then to a second purchaser, she does sign off on that sale. V'chasmalo, she does sign for it. So ivda ksubasa. So in that situation, she has lost her ksuba. And the idea is, again, she can't collect from the second person because she signed off on that sale. And she can't collect from the first one because the first person can say, I left you stuff from the second. Divrei Rabbi Meir, that's Rabbi Meir's opinion. And so the Gemara now says, Visal gadaitach ishtaduf b'nei chori, taraf mi meshabdi. Now, if you think that it's true that when the free property is ruined, then she is allowed to go to the property with a lien on it. So nihi de'ivda ksubasa misheni. Granted, she's already lost her ability to collect the ksuba from that second property because she signed off when the husband sold that off. But may rishon miya tigmi. But why can't she collect from the first person, the first purchaser? Because the idea over here is that the first purchaser said, I left you some free land. But now that free land is basically a shtadif. It's basically land that cannot be collected from because she signed off on the sale of that land. So now it's a situation of free land that really doesn't pay off the debt. So she should be able to go back to nechasim mishubadim if we hold that in a situation of a shtadif b'nei chori, you can collect from the nechasim mishubadim. And the Gemara answers, Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak says, "My ivda no." You know what the brisa means when it says she loses her ksuba because she signs off on the sale? That's just ivda misheni. It means she loses her right to collect from the second purchaser because she signed off on that. But maybe she could still go to the first purchaser. But the Gemara says, Amar Rava says, Shtei tshuvas b'davar. I have two responses to your interpretation of the brisa that ivda means ivda misheni. Chada number one, the ivda legamri mashma. The word ivda sounds like it's completely lost. She cannot collect anything. V'yod, and further, Tanya we learned in a brisa, Love mino echad umachar nechasav l'shnayim. Let's say you have a situation where a person borrowed from one individual, and then he sold his property to two people. V'chasav balchov l'lokeach sheni, and let's say the creditor, he wrote to the second purchaser, he wrote dinu devarim ein li'imach, that I'm not going to have any case against you, I'm not going to try to collect from you. So ein lo al lokeach rishon klum, so he can't go to the first purchaser either. He's told the second one that he's not going to try to get that property. And the first one left him a place with the second, because the first buyer can say, well, I left you some free property. And the fact that now you can't collect from that free property, that doesn't mean you can come back to me. And so therefore you see clearly that in this situation, that argument does not work. The person in a situation of ishtadif b'nei chori, they're not able to go back and collect from the nechasim mishubadim. And the Gemara answers Hassam over there, meaning in any situation where the creditor tells the second purchaser that I'm not going to take your property, that would apply by the wife as well, where the wife tells the second purchaser she signs off on the sale. So there they have actively caused that free land is no longer, that they're no longer able to collect from it. It's not the same as ishtadif b'nei chori. The case of ishtadif b'nei chori is when there was free land and then that free land was ruined. So there it's still a question, can you go collect from nechasim mishubadim? But if there's free land and you actively go ahead and you sign off on the sale of that free land and you basically say that you're not going to collect from that, that's your own loss. You caused your own loss, and therefore, of course, in that situation, you're not able to go to the nechasim mishubad. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Rav Yemar le Rav Ashi. Rav Yemar said to Rav Ashi, and we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Tzadi Hey Amud Beis.